Hi, welcome to another episode of Liberate the Podcast. Today, we're having a special guest. Her name is Vanessa. She's an international speaker, coach, and channel, and we're going to be having her at Liberate Hollywood next month, November 17th, but I want to have you learn a little bit about her, and so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, what do you specifically want to know?
I just want you to start talking, and this is how we go.
I always say whenever I get interviewed, like, how much time do we have? Because I can give you the full gamut.
Yeah.
The life story.
We want a little life story. I mean, well, let's backtrack a little bit to give you
Sure.
a basis. So, you know, a channel is always a very interesting aspect. A lot of people don't understand what that means.
It's
and,
true.
And, you know, there's so many different types of speakers, so many different types of coaches. And so let's start there with a little bit about how you define yourself, what roles you play, and what information and tools you utilize. Right. And then we'll go and hear a little bit about your life journey.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it is a complex and robust body of work, especially when we talk about what channeling is, because people are like, what is that? What does that mean? So I look at myself as a messenger or a vehicle to allow spirit to move through me, to be able to help share messages, or what we call in the channeling world transmissions, of higher dimensional or higher consciousness wisdom and information and healing that can help to elevate the consciousness of the planet.
Okay, so let's break that down in a little
Sure.
smaller chunks. I mean, some people might like get that fully, but transmissions, these other things. Okay, so
sure.
So you open yourself up. Well, what do you do? What do you
Yeah. I mean, I can break it down very simply so that everybody understands. So, trance channeling actually was not something that I always did. I've been a channeler in more of a conscious state, meaning when I would be having like a conversation with a client or in a group, basically I would be able to receive information intuitively and be able to channel it through. So you wouldn't even really know that I'm channeling. Sometimes my clients would say my face might change slightly, but about, 2 years ago now, when I was in Mount Shasta, I had a really incredible experience where my channel opened even more, and the Pleiadian guides, who I specifically channel, a 5th to 7th dimensional extraterrestrial race, that they say they are human beings in the future, and they've come back now to help us with our spiritual awakening, to help us with our evolution as a species, and in our consciousness, in our vibration, help us to really reach our fullest potentiality as human beings by activating more love within us, helping us to remember who we are. These beings came through, and I started to do these group channeling evenings, and of course working with clients. So the best way to break it down is, I come into the space. Obviously, I set the space so it's safe and it's clear and it's pristine energy, and that I think is something that's very important for people to know. Like, who is the channel and what are they channeling, and is the energy pristine? Because people can bring through anything.
Yeah,
and
any vibrations,
Totally.
That's one thing that I don't think people realize. They're like, I'm getting information or I'm getting guidance. Well, if you're tapping into an energy, you're tapping, what energy are you specifically tapping into? Because there's a spectrum, it's like, what radio station are you putting on? You can turn the dial and you're playing a different station. And so, there's so many different stations, and then there's the AM and the FM, and then the internet radio, right? And so I feel like it's the same for vibrations and beings and dimensions and energies that people can bring through. So
absolutely.
I love that you said that.
So it's so important, I think, for people to know that how I operate is of the highest integrity. I'm only bringing through beings that are of love. I've been trained for years in this, have a lot of mentors. I do ongoing training to make sure that the space that I'm holding the energy in and these channeling sessions and events in is one that is safe, is one that is loving, is one that's going to help advance people forward, not hinder them in their progress. So typically when a group comes together, I create the container, I introduce myself, talk a little bit about my background, because I want the audience to feel that they can trust me and feel safe with me. And then basically we go into the trance-like state. So it's a trance medium state. So basically what it looks like is I take you through a process where I get everyone grounded, where I clear out the space where everyone is clear as well, and they're active in that process of restoring their energetic sovereignty. So they're coming in as sovereign beings, they're filled with light, their I am self, their higher self is with them, and then I move into a trance-like state. And so basically my eyes are closed, I'm helping to channel the energy and sustain it through my body. Okay. And when the beings come in, people who are really sensitive to subtle energies can feel the shift. They can maybe even be able to see them. And once they move in, when I give them permission to, I start to talk and have a conversation with the audience. And the 3 guides that work with me are very engaging. They're very loving. They're actually quite humorous. And they will begin a transmission. So the transmission is basically a message or messages to the audience. What I often say about my Evenings with V events, which is just so interesting, is that each person that attends has been selected on some level. They, on a soul level, have chosen to be present. And whether they walk away feeling like, they were completely transformed and, enlightened by the information, or they get triggered and stuff comes up and they need to transmute that, they have been selected for the specific experience. People who are not meant to be there won't be there. Yeah. And this type of frequency that comes in through the Pleiadian guides is very specific. So it's a little different than working with angels, which I've been working with for many years, archangels, spirit guides, and ascended masters. So it's a very, I want to say, precise energy. And so what they do is I don't know how, it blows my mind. I'm enchanted by it myself because my analytical mind can't, figure it out, right? Yeah. So, I'm very surrendered to the process of it, and I don't try to figure it out anymore. I allow it to happen. And what seems to be the case through and through whenever I've done these events and when I've worked with clients is that they somehow know the message that they're sharing to the group. It speaks specifically to each individual and where they're at and what they're experiencing, what they're going through. And of course, in group settings, that's going to be a little bit more general. When somebody's working with me privately or in a very small, intimate group experience, it's a little bit more specific. But in the group dynamic, people see themselves in the transmissions, in the messages. They see the lessons. They see the gift. They're hearing something that's really resonating with something that's going on in their lives or within them. So their agenda really with us is to help us access our fullest potential. But because I work a lot with leaders and change makers and visionaries and artists, like people who are creating and producing and doing work in the world that is changing the world, making a positive difference. They love working with those individuals because they know that they're going to take that and they're going to do something with that information. It's like staying on the cutting edge of consciousness. That's what I always call it. This work is on the cutting edge of consciousness because the messages, the vibration, the healing that they provide is helping people to really advance evolution in their evolution. Yes. And to go out into the world and to be, they call it, and they've given me this term, light leaders.
Light leaders.
I like that. Instead of light workers, they're like, you're light leaders. You carry a frequency, a consciousness, a mission that you are specifically coded with, that you are specifically here for. And we want to help to activate and allow you to go out into the world and shine your magnificent self forward. They talk a lot about magnificent self and how to allow that essence and that energy to come through. So the first little bit is these transmissions, and then people will ask questions and they get to ask things that are specifically going on for them. And then toward the end, this is a really unique experience. Because if you've seen channeling, so a great reference that I like to give people, especially in the spiritual community, if you're familiar with Esther Hicks, who channels Abraham, that's a great, example of what channeling is. Paul Selig is another really wonderful channel, who's written a series of beautiful books called I Am the Word. And then, somebody else, like if you're in the more of the galactic or extraterrestrial community, then Daryl Anka, who channels Bashar. Yeah. So, and there's a series of many more.
And channeling, it's been something that, I mean, a lot of the religious texts were channeled texts, and, you know, from Muhammad to other people that channeled through. So, I mean, it's something that's not anything new.
Exactly. You know, like, it's not a new thing.
You know, but it's so, like, people don't have to be scared of it, is what I'm saying and getting at, is that, you know, allowing and getting these transmissions and messages to come through, you know, is not so odd or weird, right?
Well, I would say it is weird, though. That's the thing. Like,
but everything's weird. I mean,
it's true. It's true.
I mean, we're floating around an atomic bomb right now. You know, like, I mean, the fact that our skin cells know how to be skin cells, and I mean, the whole like life as existence is weird.
I agree with you. I don't even know what normal is, but I can understand when people are new to this and they witness it for the first time, how it can be a little strange or, you know, not something that they experience on a daily basis. However, I will say this, because we're going through such a shift in consciousness, because so many people are, you know, rapidly awakening, there's so many more light leaders like myself who do this work, that are stepping forward and stepping up into their missions to do this work and to normalize it. Like, I look at it like, I think I'm here to normalize it for the masses, so that it's not something that just a pocket of people around the world know about and then everyone else has no clue what this is. Like, I know that this work and the channeled messages can help many people, but you have to be ready for it, right? That's the thing. Like anything in life, you have to be ready to be able to receive it, because if you're not ready to receive it, then
it just goes over your head.
Exactly, right? In one ear and out the other. Oh, that was a cool experience.
It's like sometimes you can read the same book over and over again, years apart, and you pick up different words of wisdom as you go through. It's the same book, you know, it just changed because you changed. So through the process, how long have you been doing the more Mount Shasta type channeling these Pleiadians?
It's been over about 2 years. 2 years. Yeah. So that it all kind of came together. Now, before that, I mean, I've been in my business for 10 years, so this is not, you know. And then we have to kind of go back in history in the timeline of my life, this life. You know, I've always had this connection to spirits, so it wasn't something where I was, you know, not on this path. It seemed like I wasn't on this path, and it just kind of happened one day. Yes, it was a little surprising, but then it wasn't. Yeah. So, you know, I grew up in Canada, and I always had this strong fascination and connection to spiritual things, New Age type stuff, you know, and would always look up at, you know, out the window at the stars and be like, take me home. I know a lot of us can relate who are in this community. And I just had such a strong connection to something outside of myself and outside of this world. Yeah. And, you know, it was a struggle at times, feeling like I was kind of dropped off on a planet. I didn't really know what the hell I was doing here, and, you know, what was in store for me. And I felt very sensitive as a child, so there's a lot of empathic tendencies. But I knew how to hide stuff, because I didn't feel safe enough to talk about the intuitive hits I would receive and the messages I would get and my sensitivities, because I didn't see other people, my peers, even my parents, talking about these things. And I was brought up Catholic and went to Catholic school up until I was 18.
And how old were you when you were a kid?
Oh gosh, I mean, my first remembrances around this must be around, like maybe 7 years old, 8 years old. I mean, I remember having these little ceremonies. I talk a lot about this, you know, with the doors closed to my bedroom with these crystal rocks. And I would hold them up to the light, and I would do this little light language. Like, I would start reciting this like affirmation type prayer thing. And would I didn't know what I was doing, but the language that was coming out was so familiar to me, but I never told anybody. Yeah. And I would kind of tuck everything away under my bed and say, okay, nobody's going to know about that. And there was something about it that felt very familiar and very right and true for me. And it was when I was 14 that I got a clear message. So my clear audience kicked in. Okay. And I heard this message of going into the entertainment industry.
Okay.
You're going to go into this industry and you're going to use it as a vehicle to get your message out in the world and make a positive difference. Something along those lines,
okay.
right?
And when you were 14.
14, yeah. So I was like, this is interesting. I have nobody in the entertainment industry. I'm living in Canada in Toronto. I mean, it was the Hollywood North, so it wasn't that, extreme in terms of, getting into this field and this line of work. But it was strange. I grew up in the suburbs. Most of my peers were going to get jobs or going to school,
Well, especially at that age. Anything at that age, even if it was 18, 19, and you could say, okay, you have some, you're moving towards that. But at 14, You're not really thinking about what kind of job or career you're going to have or what difference you're going to make in the world.
Exactly. It's just like a teenager had braces. My biggest things were I'm going to high school. I'm going to be a freshman in high school and, feeling awkward and all teenage-like. But everything just seemed to come together with such ease and effortlessness in a way that looking back, I'm even probably more in awe of it now than even I was then. So I had, been classically trained as a pianist for about 10 years. So I played piano and I had an ear for music. I would learn how to play by ear versus actually reading notes.
Okay.
I'm never very strong in math, so theory and all that was not my strong suit. But that was an advantage to me with singing. So I was at high school and a friend of mine who was in the music program told me that there was an audition for this female pop group.
Okay.
And I don't know what, inclined her. Obviously it was moved by spirit in some way. We were not even that close. We were friends, but we were not like in the same circle. She came over to me. I still remember her finding me in the hall and saying, there's this audition for this female pop group. Okay, now this was during the time that Britney Spears and Spice Girls and the pop groups were really popular then. So, of course, hearing this, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. All right. And I'm like, but I don't have music. I'm not trained in singing or anything. She's like, don't worry, I'm going to help you with all of it. And I remember singing a ballad from Monica and a pop song from Mandy Moore. Yeah. And I went to this audition. I'm sitting in the waiting room and literally like looking at my mom, seeing all these stage parents and all these young kids with their guitars. I mean, they meant business. And I'm sitting there thinking, can you imagine if I actually made it into this group? Like, I had no, attachment either way to what was going to happen. I was just so thrilled to be there.
Yeah.
So I go through all these auditions and end up being one of the girls who makes it into this group.
Oh, amazing.
And we were selected with, the producer that I was working with, Peter Mann, selected us with his eyes closed. So he was listening to the blend and the harmonization. So I'm in this group. And all of a sudden, just things start to explode. And I have this acting agent. I end up getting one of the top agents in North America that was representing teenagers. I'm doing acting classes. I'm, in recording studios. I'm going to these, events and performances by, at night. And then by day, I'm this, normal high school student going to classes. And, I promised that I would go to university and get my degree as a backup. But I mean, I was all in. I was so in with this industry. And
what was the group called?
Savvy Cafe.
Savvy Cafe. I'm gonna have to
Don't ask the name. You're not going to find much online because this was kind of prior to, when YouTube and all that got... MySpace was really popular then, so we were on there. But I do have the songs. I have them on SoundCloud, actually. So, we were doing this for a long time. And, I was acting and, and then I started to model... But it was during that time period around 18, 19 that I started to get into like the conspiracy theories, because even though I was in this industry, there was still this part of me that was questioning our reality.
Yeah. And
I couldn't quite, I guess, digest and understand, like, why are we so unhappy in our society? Like, why I used to remember, in the kitchen asking my mom, okay, so I don't get it. You guys go to work 5 days a week. You've got 2 days off. Like, who made these rules? Like, who told you that this is the way life is supposed to be? Like, it just doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, and drive these little cars and do these little things and like these. It's everything is so weird.
It's so weird, and I honestly, I didn't get it. I really didn't, and I questioned it. My mom would always give me the same answer. Well, this is just the way life is. And I'm like, okay, well, that's just not good enough for me, right? This little like indigo rebellious teenager. So I started to get into some of this conspiracy theory work. And when I dove into it, again, by synchronicity, all came into my reality. I became depressed actually for about 6 months. Yeah. When I read the material, I was like, well, what the hell is the point in all this? It's like, because something within it actually kind of resonated with me, even though some of it sounded really outlandish and completely like crazy.
Like what in particular? Because that's such a spectrum.
Gosh, yeah.
You know? I mean, so like, what was one of the things that really landed with you that sounded like, you know?
Just the whole idea of being programmed. Being programmed as a society, being controlled by beings or the elite. Uh-huh. You know, I mean, I remember even reading about the fluoride in the water and shrinking the pineal glands and being like, wow, you know, from our food, you know, to the, you know, and this is actually even before the time when a lot of these conspiracy theories
got big,
and you know, or it's kind of relevant now to mainstream society. Mm-hmm. So at the time, you know, some of these people, I read a lot of David Icke's work at that time. You know, he was laughed at, you know, and a lot of the things that he was saying really made a lot of sense. And so for me, what happened was, it was like the reset and the disconnect I needed to my upbringing around Catholicism. Okay. And what I was taught about God. And what I was taught about religion. And that stuff didn't quite sit well with me fully, even when I was growing up, but I went along with it. Yeah. And it was just what I needed to discover and explore what spirituality meant for me. Yeah. As an individual, as a sovereign being. And when that started to happen, I started to get introduced to, you know, Louise Hay and a lot of the self-love movement and Norman Vincent Peale's work, you know, the law of attraction and The Secret, when it really was still a secret. It's kind of funny. It wasn't like a popular thing. It was like this underground thing at the time. Came into my reality, and I started to question, you know, what I was also doing in this industry, because even though I was having these incredibly cool experiences and, you know, living my dream, so to speak, the more I was diving into my own personal and spiritual exploration and awakening and working on myself, it started to feel more and more misaligned. There was like this gap that was forming, and it was like that intuitive response that I had as a kid started to come back online. It kicked in, and I would start questioning things and looking at my reality and be like, I've been in this for a really long time and nothing is really making a big difference in the world. And I actually started another business. I was an entrepreneur at an early age, like 21, and I had an event marketing and promotions business. Okay. And, you know, I was doing really amazing events with big, you know, corporate clients, and worked with Fiji Water and the film festival in Toronto. And as cool as it was, when I would lay my head down at night, I didn't feel like I was ultimately promoting products. You know, I'm not just talking about Fiji Water, but just in general, like promoting products and services that were really benefiting people. It was, you know, on the one end, we're being marketed to people, to the masses, as this being this amazing, really helpful, beneficial product. But then when I'd actually do some research on it, I was like, it's not really helping people. And there was a dissonance that was created as a result of this. And I thought, well, something needs to be done here. And in my entertainment career, what started to happen is really bizarre situations. I would book these amazing gigs and get these, you know, roles, and, you know, things would be happening, and then all of a sudden they would just disappear, or they would fall apart. There would be loss on some level. And I was like, what is happening? So 23, I was working as a solo artist, as a singer, and I was on the brink of releasing a single. And my manager and my producer had a conflict that caused them to separate. Mm-hmm. And I had a life coach at the time. It was my first life coach at 23. And I remember us finishing those sessions and him saying, like, you're just not cut out for this business anymore. And that, like, warrior inside of me that just had this such devotion and commitment to getting to LA, to making it in this industry and having a voice, like using that as the vehicle to really make a difference in the world, was like, no, forget it. Like, I'm doing this. I'm committed to it. And I was set to come to LA. I had some agents that I was going to meet. And about a month before, 3 weeks before I was set to go, I got a virus all over my face and in my mouth. And of course, right, it manifests there because when you come to Hollywood, your image and your looks, are part of the job. So.
Well, and I mean, look at what you just said. You were using your voice, and so there it goes, and it could collapse and said.
I literally couldn't drink water for like 3 weeks. It was so bad. I had a virus, so I knew. I knew it was the universe's way of saying, "Girl, this is not your path anymore. Stop fighting it. Like, let me show you the way." And I started to slowly, let go of everything, let go of the event marketing business. I, stopped with, principal agents and modeling. I was doing some background work, I was in the union, so it was paying the bills, and, went on this like soul searching path. And, I was a flight attendant, and I worked in office jobs. I did all these like, everyday things that, most people would be doing to pay their bills and to figure themselves out. And I was in this really awful job. I would have anxiety going to it every day. It was a cubicle job. I was working actually for a company that would supply food for daycares and preschools. And I hated it. I mean, I hated the job. And I didn't really like my boss either. And I don't think she really liked me. We just didn't really see eye to eye. And the day that I was going in to quit, she was firing me. So I leave this job, and I'm literally in this vastness of emptiness. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, of being in this space of like, okay, there's nothing in front of me. I have like for the first time in so many years, I had no commitments. Wow. There was nothing there. There was no dreams. There was no goals. There was no hustling to make it happen. There was nothing. Yeah. And in that space of nothingness, I really found actually this comfort in it for the first time. Like I felt like I could breathe. And again, the voice came in, and and I said, well, what am I here for? Like, what is my purpose? I thought that was my purpose when I was in that industry. What the heck was the point of all of that? I've been exploring for like the last year. I've been, meditating, doing yoga, getting back into my spiritual roots, all of this. What really is my purpose? And the voice said, well, you have been studying so much of this alternative health and wellness and personal development and spirituality. You're here to help people. Yeah. And you're here to help people by doing the things that you're most passionate about, that you believe in. So I was like, okay. I ended up going back to school and never thought I would. I learned coaching in there and, studied, workplace wellness, health promotion, organizational development. But I knew going into it that I was going to have my own business. And the director of my program was my next coach that I worked with for years. She was a Reiki master, did a lot of work with reconnective healing. She passed that book on to me, activated my hands. I mean, we had a really, really amazing relationship. She was a door opener for me. She really helped me to become, coach and to start my business and to create a lot of opportunities as an entrepreneur. And when I graduated that program, it was one of the best years of my life. Yeah. I enjoyed it so much. And when I came out of school, I got my yoga, mindfulness certification, all that, and went to work. But at that time, I was also in a relationship, and that relationship was a catalyst for a lot of my spirit gifts. So my partner was unfaithful that I was with at the time. So it was real life training for me to get my intuitive and my clairvoyant and my energy healing abilities turned on, because I didn't know how to trust myself, which is something that I think so many of us struggle with.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things I think so feel too. Coming across as inability to be their self and inability to trust the self.
Totally.
But in hearing this, I just really want to stress this to the people that are listening, is the journey is your journey. Yeah. And that a lot of times people get caught up in, well, what is my purpose, or where am I supposed to go, or what do I do now? Mm-hmm. And they forget that aspect. Like, there's so much. Me looking at you and hearing your story, there's so much of that child, teenage star element that is now giving you the ability to feel comfortable to spread the spiritual message and the teaching, and to get on stage and be a speaker. And like, had you not had that, you might not have been able to do the next chapter. It's like, had you not learned algebra, you're probably never going to learn calculus. It's like, and if you didn't learn math first, you're not going to get to the next level. And it's this continuous build. So if people are listening and they're hearing and they're inspired by your story, you know, and like in mapping themselves into it, that they can find their story too and see where the thread ties everything together. That everywhere you go, there you are, and so that they can awaken and they can move to that next direction at any time, right? And so I think that's important, like hearing and tying that in for people.
It is. I mean, and every path is unique, and I get asked all the time, like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? And like, you are in your purpose. You already are in your purpose. It's just a constant exploration and unfolding of who you are. And I mean, we have such an attachment to our purpose being something that pays the bills or is a career, and not everybody's purpose is going to be that. You know, it's nice to have that, but that's not really our purpose. Our purpose is to really be our most magnificent self, to really be our fullest expression of who we're here to be, and to come alive in doing that and be able to express that through different modalities and through our different gifts and through our different skills and through our personality, you know? So these experiences that I had were all the perfect setup for, you know, the past 10 years of what I've been doing, supporting clients all over the world, you know, groups, individuals, all of that, you know? I mean, I would not have been able to show up as I have and also be able to really fully surrender. I mean, let me tell you, becoming a trans channel has been like one of the hardest things I've ever gone through in my life. I mean, it looks so easy because it's polished and because I've done so much work on myself all these years, but it's been so hard on the body. It's been so hard emotionally. It's a form of work that is not particularly recognized yet by the masses, you know, and I will say this, my number one commitment has been to listen to what my soul and spirit is telling me and to act on it and to be with it. And that is what has gotten me to this point, because, you know, in the last 10 years, I got that clear message about 5 years ago. You're taking this work into Hollywood. That's what you're here to do. You are here to take it into Hollywood. You are here to shift the consciousness in Hollywood, to be this conscious disruptor, to bring more light into this industry, and to work with individuals, you know, who resonate with this work, to elevate their frequency, their vibration. It's time. I mean, we are in one of the, you know, I would say the biggest, most influential paradigms, right, in the world. I mean, the entertainment industry has the ability to really help people grow or not, right? Or keep them asleep. And I'm speaking quite freely here when I speak about this.
Absolutely.
Because I think it's important, because, you know, some of this is not going to resonate with people, and that's okay. I don't expect it to. But for the people where they really feel like, wow, you know, my role is to be myself, and in that I'm spreading light. I am being positive. I am being, you know, loving. I'm doing my, you know, transformational work on myself. I get to make a difference in the world, whether it's on a community level or a global level. It doesn't really matter. You know, every person counts. So, you know, like we're saying, like every journey is unique. And there's not one that's going to be the same, but that uniqueness is the absolute piece of like blueprint in the whole, you know, collective consciousness of your role, of who you're here to be and what you're here to do. And you know, to continue, like I feel more than anything, one of the biggest messages that I give people is like, you get to be you. Like, this is stripping away all the things that marketing, the entertainment world, that your parents, that your lineage, that your peers, that your society has told you to be, and you get to be you. Like, how revolutionary is that? It's so simple, but we have lived in a world that tells us to not be you, and has programmed us, conditioned us to believe that being you is not enough.
And that there needs to be some kind of, you know, proving something or validating or this or that, and it's constantly a perspective of the other. It's people take their self, and instead of looking through their own eyes, they're looking from eyes of around the room or around the place, looking at them, and they're more concerned with that perspective than their perspective. And I think that, you know, it's beautiful.
And it takes courage, right? For you to be able to authentically show up in your life and be you, because that can often trigger, you know, other people around you who expect you or have seen you in a certain way. But that's even more of the sign, you know, to grow, because we need some friction sometimes to be able to elevate and to grow. You know, a seed, when it's planted in soil has to have some friction in the elements, right? Sun, water, there's not enough rain. We live in California, drought, so there is challenge in that, but that's part of the process.
Yeah, and I hear it over and over again. People want life to be perfect and easy, but then you would never grow, right? And another element besides like the seed and growing in the soil is an example is like the butterfly caterpillar, right?
Yes, exactly.
If you rip the cocoon open too fast and you help you think, or a child or somebody thinks that they're going to be helping the butterfly get out, but if they actually do that a day earlier, an hour earlier or whatnot, the exoskeleton doesn't grow hard enough, and they'll never have their wings to fly.
Right.
And so that pressure and that cagement and that ability is actually what is causing the strength of building the wings to soar.
Yes.
Yes.
And looking, because when I look at the course of my life, the relationship I was in, that was extremely painful. It was a lot of growing pains going through that. All these situations that are personal to my journey, I've learned to recognize and see the gifts and the blessings in them. And one of the things that I've adopted, and this is helpful, it's like looking at all of the circumstances in your life and seeing how they're helping you. Yeah. They're happening for you to really discover more of who you are and to share that. And then when we have this idea that, life, if my prayers are answered, it's going to look like this, and this, we're actually getting in the way of actually seeing how life is trying to move through us and push us to that higher place of our evolution and our magnificent self to be shared with the world.
Yeah, and if people just look back just for a moment at their past journey, not the situations that they're still feeling guilt, resentment, and anger towards, but the ones that are kind of neutralized, and they look back to those really quote-unquote negative moments in their life, and I think that there's not a person on this planet can't see how it served them.
Yeah.
Once it's neutralized, at least.
Yes. And that's the growth in it, is going through the process of saying, I'm ready to heal this and look at it and understand it from maybe a different perspective. Yeah. I'm ready to, do that deeper work around it, which we need to get neutral. Yeah. Often. So.
And so sometimes those are the prayers being answered.
Yes.
Sometimes that is the, like for hearing your story with going through a relationship that you had where they weren't faithful and everything like that, was the exact lesson that you needed to search deeper into spirit, to channel on a deeper level, to connect it to different beings, right? And so had you not had that, but there was that prayer already existed inside of you, so the circumstance had to create the scenario and the ability to transform you.
Of course.
You know? And I love that that's what you're helping people see, really feel, and get on an inner level. Because I think the more people get that, the more that there's no attachment. If there's no attachment to how things need to be, there's no pain and suffering either. It doesn't mean that things aren't uncomfortable. It doesn't mean that there's not a lesson to learn. But learn it, feel it, then see how it's serving you and move beyond it, right? And then let's get out continuously creating and being an expression of us, right?
Absolutely. And there's nothing more fulfilling than that. Like that really at the end of the day, I always say, well, I'm really truly a fulfillment teacher, because
I like that.
You can talk about like consciousness, you can talk about vibration, we can talk about being you, purpose, all of that. But at the end of the day, aren't we just really searching for true fulfillment?
Yeah.
It's not going to come from, what's happening out here. Those things are like the icing on the cake, as I say. Yeah. It's the extension of when you find that fulfillment within yourself, and fulfillment comes from being in your fullest expression. I believe. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I believe that too. Now, through some of the channeling that you've done over the years, if you could share a couple of the most inspirational or divine messages that you feel that have really stood with you and stayed even after the session.
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Let's pick a few really like powerful ones to, so people get an example of kind of what comes through, but also like, some of those words of wisdom that we can leave people with.
I remember one of my first group channeling experiences. There was quite a few people who were quite advanced on their paths that were sitting in the audience. a lot of teachers and coaches and practitioners and all that. And they could pick up that several people in the audience were really looking for this like transcendental, mind-blowing, out-of-body experience. Like there was this attachment and expectation that the answers that they were going to receive were just going to send them like in this total breakthrough aha.
Okay.
And I was blown away after in hearing the recording and having the feedback from people in the audience, because they actually said, now is not the time for you to be out of the body. It's time to bring this energy down into the body. It's time to stop having expectations that your spiritual growth, that your life is always going to be these, blissed out experiences. There's a spectrum to your spiritual growth. There's a spectrum of love even, like they've talked a lot about actually love as well, being like how we've learned what love is, or the concept of love is actually not true. It's an illusion.
Yeah.
We have this attachment thinking, oh, it's either love or fear. Well, what if fear is actually a form of love, and it's a deeper form? And this judgment that we have, even in this industry of, I gotta get rid of all my fears.
Yeah.
I gotta, like, F fears.
Yeah, people do that with all quote unquote negative emotions. It's like,
right.
but they're there because they're supposed to be serving you.
Exactly.
Pain is a signal that there's something wrong.
Exactly.
Anger allows you to know your boundaries. It's there.
It's so. I mean, it's things like these kinds of concepts that they talk about. Then they've really brought up about presence, and I've been taken actually on my own journey because. When I channel, I'm actually receiving all of the healing as well. And they put me into, my own process. And one of the things that I've seen so much that they've reinforced over and over again is, this is the time period for us to get so present, to really experience what pure present awareness is, what it means to be in the now and to find the fulfillment in that. And I've seen across the board with a lot of my colleagues and people who've been on this path, especially this year, where it's like the rug has been swept up underneath them, and all of the things that created safety, or created the illusion of safety, I should say, and comfort, but maybe have not been fully aligned, where it was all brought up into view.
Wow.
And stripped away quite intensely. And for me personally, I was put into sabbatical for most of this year.
Wow.
To heal my body. So I was getting exhausted and depleted, and channeling requires a lot of energy for me to be able to bring that. I mean, it's not from this planet. I'm stretching the capacity of what my physical body can hold energetically. And I've had to do a lot of work on my body and my nervous system to be able to do this so smoothly and seamlessly and without being, wiped out for days and weeks afterward. But at first it was really taxing on my body. And through these teachings, they actually put me into this sabbatical. And they're like, we're going to take away everything because we know how important fulfillment is for you in the moment, more so than serving people, more so than your mission, more so than all these identities that you've had attached as a high performer, as somebody who's here to make a difference in the world. We want to strip you bare so you know the core of who you are.
Yeah.
Not through a definition or an attachment to something outside of you, because none of that really... And this is a concept that on a mental level, so the things with the teachings that they have, it's like when I speak about it, I feel like words dilute it. And so in the work that I do with the Pleiadians, they also do light language healing, and they do operatic tones.
Okay.
So it bypasses the ego, bypasses the mind, and it works on subtle body energies and levels and meridian points. It works in the field, and it works in pulling things out and putting light codes in, so that there's just this evolution that happens in time. So I always tell people, like, you're going to receive these really amazing transmissions, but it's actually the stuff that's unsaid that's even more powerful. It's
I love that.
Reading in between the lines of some of the things they say, because some of the things they say may not be revolutionary to everyone, but there's something in it that can be ever so subtle, but it's this level of impeccable precision. They are about precision. Find sometimes working with angels and other guides is not as precise. This is an energy that is so precise, but works on such subtle levels, because right now it's not about these big, huge explosions of transformation. It's about working on the most subtlest little pieces within you that you've been avoiding, or that you're not consciously aware of, or you've intellectualized but you haven't embodied, because it's all about embodying this now.
Yeah, and those subtle changes, even like, roll a marble just a little bit, will create a huge difference, of where it goes. And it's over that period of time,
Yeah. So it's
and it's not even just the words, I bet. It's the energetics.
It is.
So you said that the people that are more sensitive to energy can feel the shift of vibration in the room just in the presence of the beings that being there. So, there's something to be said about just that frequency of where you're sitting within.
Right.
Too.
Right. And they always say this, in saying that, I love that you shared that, but they always say we're not gods. Like, we're not the end all or be all. Just because we've been able to come through and deliver this message, and maybe it's helped you, maybe it hasn't, like whatever we're saying to you, we honor the magnificent self inside of you that knows truth. So if something doesn't, resonate, throw it away. We're okay with that. We just offer you, what they offer is a perspective, a specific perspective that even me as an intuitive and as somebody who has been doing this work for a long time, and coaching and healing and energy and all that, I just don't get. They have a perspective that's different, but that perspective may not sit with you. I mean, sometimes, most of the time, it kind of goes right in. It depends if you're ready to really hear it, but they always want you to be the person who has the ability to say yes or no to that. And to listen to your own inner authority, which I love so much, because one thing I don't want to see with this work is that these beings become like, oh my goodness, whatever they say, is truth, and I want to really position that this is an opportunity. I made this agreement to do this work because it's another tool to help people and to advance consciousness on the planet. But the minute it starts to become egoic, or the minute it starts to not help people, I'm out. I don't need to be a part of that. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a really loving and enjoyable and juicy experience, enriching experience for people to be a part of. And as much as I've described so much of this, it's one of those things, you've got to experience it.
So speaking of having to experience it, where can people find you and locate you? Because I know that you do privates, you do other channeling group sessions, and so where can they find you?
Well, you can visit my website at vanessapetronelli.com.
We'll put that in the bottom.
Yeah, because it's a long name. I don't expect you to remember that. And I'm really active on social media too, so I do a lot of posts that people have told me really add a lot of value and support in their lives. And you can join my newsletter. You can find me on Instagram at Vanessa Petronelli, and on Facebook. My business page on there is at V Petronelli. Okay. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me, through there.
All right, and we're having you on the 17th of November.
Yes,
here
that's even better.
at 5 p.m. So if you listen to this before November 17th and you're in the Los Angeles area, definitely come out to Liberate Hollywood for a live experience. And if not, and you're listening to this before, or after, or it might be you're out of the area, you can find where you're going to be in whatever cities and locations, or online and streaming, and we're going to offer that available live stream as well. So
so if you're somewhere outside of the LA area, you can also join us online via live stream. So
awesome.
I'm really excited.
If you had to leave everybody with one thing, what would it be?
Oh gosh, these questions are always so tough. What wants to come through?
There we go. We get an experience of her channeling. I see it.
What's coming up in like this area, my third eye, is it's like this, just very simple, like, be authentically you. I mean, there's no one like you. There's something about this message, this conversation, about that, because not all the conversations are like that when I'm interviewed, but there's something about whoever needs to hear this. It's time for you to step into your most fullest authentic expression. Don't waste any more time trying to contort yourself into being what other people have told you should be. It's time to be you. There's something very unique that you have to offer the world, and the longer you wait from being your most authentic expression, you're doing a disservice to others. Because people are craving and praying for you to show up as you in this world.
Yeah, and you're craving it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you so much.